Hello and welcome to Massalia Tales episode 50. In the previous episode we saw fights in Britannia. Eustochus moved west to auto-resolve his way to victory over another Iceni settlement. Meanwhile Heracles moved north where the enemy had a stronger defence. He actually had to fight a battle against them. The balance bar wasn't all that uneven, but he completely destroyed them, taking almost no losses thanks to the strength of his formation. As a result of the victory we had conquered all of the province of Britannia and were able to make clients of the remaining Iceni lands and the Abdani to the west, so the whole of the British Isles were now secure. Our client state Scordisi was attacking the Caturoi settlement. We helped them out along with the Spartans to wipe the Caturoi off the map. We then encountered diplomatic problems, meaning my planned war against Persia wasn't really going to happen because of all the allies that could get pulled into the war. The only way to avoid it was to make peace with the hordes of the steppe, which wasn't happening. But then suddenly a new war was thrust upon us as the Nervii attacked our allies, the Illyrian Confederation. We went to war with them and we share lots of borders with them, so there were lots of targets for us to attack and for them to attack against us. Some of their forces crossed the border and set up a fort in our territory. Bendis is now going to assault it. The Nervii had been naive to think that Massalian leaders would rather have them in control of Italia than the Hellenistic Illyrians. But it is highly likely that the Massalian envoys communicating between the tribal leaders and the Timucoi had misled them to believe the opposite. It was a perfect way for Bendis, already waiting on the Nervii border, to justify making a land grab against a people he had little respect for. For those with no desire to see Nervii subdued, they would instead be convinced by the need to win the support of their powerful neighbour who, along with Carthage, were part of the finely tuned balance of power between the Western empires. Once war was declared, no time was wasted by either side in waging it. Bendis is forming up his men, ready to attack the Nervii invaders who, as we can see, are fortified in the middle of this open space. They're attacking from three sides. One side is just cavalry, that's basically a distraction, they're not going to make a major attack. This is the rear attacking force made up of heavy infantry, these hoplites and peltasts. We've also got some elite swordsmen in there as well. All of these troops are very experienced warriors, so although the enemy has good troops of their own, I think we have the man-to-man advantage. Here is the main force approaching from the west. It's got all of the light infantry, these archers who'll be able to fire into the fort from range, and a bunch more of the heavy spears to provide a direct attack. So we walk up to the fort. The first order of business is to rain arrows on the men inside. We have a missile superiority in this particular battle, so what we can do is focus our archers on firing at the enemy's archers, so you can see here, not even facing the right direction it looks like, and just try and wipe them out so that we have a definitive range advantage, so that any ammunition we have left after taking out the enemy's archers or slingers, we could then just fire into their heavy infantry to weaken them as we wish. The enemy do at first return fire. Our men are going to take a few casualties from that, but not many. Their archers are better than mine, but they don't have very many. At the same time, I'm advancing heavy infantry who are taking some of the enemy's archer fire, plus fire from the towers, and as they get closer, they're going to take fire from javelins. A lot of the enemy's units are equipped with javelins, which they can throw over the palisade at my men. These men aren't actually making an assault, although it might look like it. They're just coming up to throw flaming torches at the palisade. This will allow me to open up new passages in. Here you can see one of those heavy infantry units throwing jams over the top. So yes, we're going to bombard the wall with these flaming torches, and this basically increases the fire damage. Once the fire damage is at 100%, the wall catches fire. Eventually it collapses, and this opens up new entrances, so we don't have to attack through choke points, or we can attack through the choke point to focus the enemy into it and then use the other entrance to come in and rear flank them. Things like that. So all around the fort, just to begin with, we're burning down various pieces of the palisade. We're taking fire from the enemy's guard towers as we do it, and any enemy units that have missiles inside will be hitting us, so we'll take losses, but it's worth it for the strategic advantage. Now after I actually did this, the enemy suddenly ran out of the main entrance towards my main force. So it seems they're going to slightly give up a defensive advantage there by not forcing me to come into the fort. So that was useful for me. And it looked here like they were actually going to use the entrance I'd opened up to come and rear flank my army by coming out to attack my men once they'd turned to engage the attackers from the main gate. That could have been a very nice strategy, but unfortunately the enemy decided to pull out of that idea at the last second, and those men went back round to attack through the main gate with everyone else. So they almost had an advantage there, but they've screwed it up. And by attacking en masse out of the west gate, the east side of the fort was left undefended, so I was able to rush in, and I can now capture the guard towers, which will allow them to start firing for me. We can also start attempting to capture the central point, but the enemy will have troops on it, so it's not going to be captured in our favour. We can decapture it for the enemy, which will reduce their morale. So in we go, our forces rush in to attack the enemy's rear and capture everything we can, while at the front it's just a straight engagement with our heavy infantry fighting theirs, which I'm absolutely fine with because I think mine has an edge. Some of the enemy's cavalry, you can see, has come out to fight with me, but because most of my heavy infantry are spearmen, that's absolutely fine. We are mostly hoplites with a few units of a unit called the Celto-Hellenic hoplite, I think, which is actually a sword unit, who are basically legionaries, inferior versions of the thorax legionaries we've got in other armies. Some of the enemies did come out of that main fight in order to focus on my rear attacking force. Here you can see their lighter swords attacking my heavier swords. Obviously that's going to go fine fighting over the capture point now, so I definitely can't capture it until we defeat them, but I think I will defeat them because my units are just simply superior. Now, a tiny bit later, you can see fighting on the front line, there's this sneaky rear attack coming from enemy chariots. These chariots had just been in the melee, got defeated obviously because they were being used improperly. They routed, but then came back from routing with a dangerous angle to come and rear attack me. Luckily, Bendis comes over with his heavy cavalry and they just wipe the chariots out in a couple of seconds, just riding through them. So that rear attack was avoided, and Bendis is now inspiring his men to fight even harder. We basically just need to beat the men in a melee. We've got plenty of opportunities to surround them coming up. We have some of their units surrounded already, and as we hack through the lines behind them here, things are going to get easier. One of the units did break away to start recapturing the towers, which was inconvenient because I didn't have any heavy infantry I could use to go and lock them down. I did have, though, some out of ammunition peltasts nearby, who I was able to use to delay the enemy, although they would lose in melee. So the veteran swords beat the first unit they were fighting. They're now fighting against a lighter unit. It's going to be very easy for those guys. Here it is a tiny bit later. The swords have actually turned round to engage with the enemy's heavy infantry, having beaten the light infantry, and the peltasts are helping out as well, just keeping the enemy in place. I've got cavalry units who actually aren't meant to be in this fight. I ordered them to run into the fort and didn't realise they were just going to run right into the melee. So actually they lost a decent number of troops by accidentally pushing forwards into a melee they weren't very good at. So the main part of the fight is almost won. As you can see, we've got the enemy surrounded very much, and now I put my shock cavalry in the middle of the fort, ready to just hit bits of enemy formation from behind. Here you can see these heavy spears are annihilated by a shock charge from behind, pushed against a phalanx on the front, tons of them die, the unit shatters. At this stage, the same fate is all that's left for the rest of the enemy because we have total territorial domination of their fortifications. They decide to try and get out. They shatter forwards coming into my main force. Not going to go well for them. Many of them will be killed as they try to escape. It's a decisive victory for Bendis. So we've began as we mean to go on. We've defeated the Nervii's invasion force quite easily, and now we're going to turn and see what counterattacks we can make. Didn't think I'd actually get one myself. A real treat. Barbarians are a strange foe to fight, don't you think? They seem strong, seem powerful at first glance, but really they're rather basic in their style. Attack, attack, attack! So for more thoughtful fighters like ours, it's simply a matter of counter, counter, counter. You never need to endanger yourself by going on the attack. Just a theory. However it's done, clearly our men will slice through all of the Nervii like a prow through water. Not the best of lands, sure, but added to my holdings in Gaul, they will make a basis for a wealthy state. I shouldn't have got me talking about this. Let's kill more Nervii rats before they escape. Come on! So that's our victory. The enemy took 4 to 5 times the number of casualties that we did. A few regiments still alive. They lost their general though, and the majority of their best forces. Our army still in good condition. We're going to enslave the captives, and the survivors who escaped we're going to chase down and finish them off. I was a little concerned I might be using up too many movement points, but actually I can get over to where they are using basically no movement points, so it's all fine. I think the roads in this province are very highly developed because we're such a wealthy faction, so we cut them down. The Nervii's invasion has been roundly defeated, and next it's time to look on to where we're going to go next with the Claws of the Peak and Bendis. There are Nervii territories in all directions basically, and the main threat is from the east because there's a full stack in the territory over there. So my first move is going to be to go up to the border, not crossing it because I want to replenish, but next turn I think we'll be moving on to the east to try and defeat that army. You can see they have another army near their capital. That one could come down to Uburzis or go further south to Vesontio. They've also got another army there, that's the one I was talking about to the east, and that one could come down into the Alps here, but we've actually got Acroneos, our force that's never really engaged in combat. In fact, has definitely never engaged in combat because they've just been sitting there for the whole campaign, and they can move up here to this river crossing. That's the only way for that army to get into my territory. At first I fortified it, but then I realised if I don't fortify, then an enemy attack will be a river battle, which will be nice and advantageous for that army because it's full of pikes and heavy units. And indeed, as we go into the next turn, the enemy do bring down a massive army to try and make this forced river crossing. The enemy has a very experienced commander who's going to be buffing their troops, and their troops are pretty good, but as I said, the large numbers of heavy pikes in our force will mean that doing a river defense is going to be ideal, so that balanced bar probably isn't going to ring true once we actually get into the fight, because we'll have a massive defender's advantage. So let's have a little look at the battlefield. There were 2 crossing points, and curiously the enemy entirely attacked across the ford rather than the bridge itself. You can see I'd split up to defend both, thinking they would attack across both, so that's very interesting, and in fact is good for me, because now I can put troops onto the other side of the river to harass the enemy from the back, which is ideal. So all the heavy infantry, including the General Acroneos, moves across there. The archers are going to rush back towards the position at the fort. Because the enemy have ranged units, they're going to begin the battle by just firing across at my side, which is a good idea for them. I'm forming up with the 3 squads of heavy pikes defending the whole width of the ford. They're definitely not going to get through if they charge that line. My archers on my bank start firing over towards the enemy. The enemy has 2 units of archers and 1 unit of slingers. Right now I can only see one of the slingers and one of the archers because their archers have the ability to hide on open ground, so we can't always see them. One of them is amongst this sword unit here. We saw these slingers just now. The slingers are going to go down really easy against my archers. We have a definite advantage there. The enemy's archers better than mine, but we've got more. They're sending forward 1 unit from their formation to start crossing the river. The rest are holding their position. So it seems they're just going to test my defences. Right now, I didn't actually realise my right flank here was taking archer fire. There's a unit that I can't see that I mentioned. You can see the arrows are falling from the sky, but there's no arch unit on the opposite bank firing them. So actually when I was playing, I didn't notice this happening at all because I was focusing on their archers on their right flank, which is the ones I could actually hit. They're somewhere amongst these trees and long grasses there. We'll try and find them later on. Right now all my archers are here focusing on their slingers. You can see we've got loads of them killed. They're going to rout pretty soon, and we're going to switch target to rain arrows up on their archers. The bonus being that when we miss the archers there, we're actually hitting some of their infantry, so that's all good. Now soon enough, the enemy decided to just make their attack as my forces loomed behind them. They charge in everything, charging onto the front of my pike formation, which is ideal. My forces coming in from behind were distracted by these enemy cavalry who ran out to fight them. Not a bad move from the enemy, because although the cavalry will lose in the melee, they are holding up my men from getting close to their main force, so they're doing a job there until I can micro my men out of the engagement. So the whole engagement on the river is going to be absolutely fine, because of course they're frontally charging my pikes. Although of course the pikes on the flank that were taking the archer fire are actually somewhat weakened. I think over the course of the battle we probably lost about half in 2 regiments of the pikes from the archer fire, which was disappointing, but it's still going to be enough to hold the enemy. Our formation is so thick that we can take heavy losses. And now with the enemy all grouped together, you can see I'm bringing in the peltasts. This situation is where they thrive. They're just going to throw waves of javelins into the huge mess of enemies who are stuck there, kept at a distance from my troops while the pikes, which will reduce friendly fire, and totally crammed together, which basically means that my pelters always hit something. Any shots that miss their target will probably hit an enemy anyway. So they've got lots of heavy infantry there. We'll take big casualties from the peltast attack, including their general's unit right at the front there. My pikes are starting to get ground down, unfortunately, by the continuing archer fire, so we really need to get rid of those hidden archers. You can see the arrows flying out of these trees. They're definitely there somewhere, and because my force from the rear has been delayed, it means they're getting off more and more volleys, and they've almost defeated one of my units of pikes actually. Finally though, my men managed to push forwards, and here you can see Acroneos leading his heavy cavalry to go and find those archers, and they pop out of hiding once we get really close. They had some scout cavalry here as well, a very weak cavalry unit and a light cavalry who will just be cut down by Acroneos' heavy cav. So we take revenge on the archers, easily defeated by the cavalry, and now we've cleared up the enemy's back lines to advance with our men. Although that unit of cavalry that attacked at first, it routed and then came back with just a few troops, and they were very desperate to make an attack. They rear attacked my legionaries, but legionaries basically don't give a damn about being rear attacked by a not particularly good unit. They just turn around without losing any men and kill those cavalry. So as we prepare for our rear attack, let's have a little look at the main battle line. It's holding up very well, especially here in the centre. The enemy being kept at a distance. They're not going to be able to kill us. Our pikes won't kill very many of them. We've already done a lot of damage with missile units. On our right flank, the archer fire has thinned out our pikes so much that the enemy are almost breaking through. The formation isn't really up to snuff. It's not going to hold them off properly. On the left, another weak pike formation. It's not being attacked very much though, so it's fine. Now, because those two flanks were both weak, I'm going to pull all of the pikemen that we still have alive out and push in instead 4-ounce legionaries. They, of course, will actually have the potential to be killed by the enemy in melee because they'll be fighting properly, but they're very good and the enemy are tired, so we're going to really start the grind from now on.
Those spies said the Greeks did not know of this crossing. We have been sold out. I'll wring the necks of those bastards with my own hands. They also said the enemy were but an overfed garrison that knew nothing of fighting. But what is this we see? They stand fast against our best warriors. They step forward to fill the ranks when a man is killed. They watch like statues until their ward runes command them to move. These are not simply warriors, they are the life soldiers we've heard of. The ones that conquered Gaul and Britannia. And now they are behind us.
Now, of course, it's time to begin our rear attack on the enemy. The enemy turns and forces out of their main army to rush out to meet our rear attack. Not that's going to do much. You can see they're running super slowly coming out of the river, and my legionaries are just going to casually roll up and start fighting them. We'll have the advantage there, so that's all fine. I'm actually waiting before I attack for my pikemen to come up, who are taking their time there, but soon we'll have a complete line, and we can then just press all of these heavy infantry into the back of the enemy, which of course will shock them to no end, but perhaps they don't even need that because their army is actually starting to break up at the front just from fighting my main force here. More and more units starting to turn and run, leaving fewer and fewer at the front, which of course makes life harder for them and increases their chance of routing. Their general and guards has already routed, so there's not all that much hope left for the enemy. And you can see we go through a really slow chain route. Unit after unit slowly disappears off the battlefield until finally we just about manage to get them all. One of the slowest chain routes I've seen, but once it happens, we have the enemy totally surrounded. Most of them are trapped in this river, so I decided to play it into the rout phase to make sure we can get them completely trapped. We basically hit them from all sides with everything, sending in all the cavalry as well to rush into the river and start a massive, messy, chaotic slaughter. And I only end it when the first of the enemies start actually getting out of my envelopment, so that when I end the battle I maximise the number of enemies who'll just be deleted off the map on the campaign phase. So, a heroic victory in Acroneos' first battle. It wasn't a particularly hard fight, a couple of surprises from the archers, but overall it went as expected. The Nervii army is totally demolished. We killed almost 10 times the number we lost. That army is now functionally destroyed, a couple of units left alive, but they're no longer any worry, and we did manage to kill their super high level commander in the battle as well. They actually move in more forces to reinforce that province just to the east of Bendis, so although I think that was the army from that province, they're still going to have forces there. And now, as we continue the end turn sequence, we get this rather unexpected message. Hayastan, the Armenian Empire, is attacking Trapezoros, my client state, even though, as you can see here, they're actually allies to Trapezoros. I don't know what they did to trigger this, but it's forcing me to make a decision. Do I step in to fight the war on behalf of my client state, which is literally what the whole client state thing means? I'm supposed to do this, but Hayastan's a very difficult opponent. I decide, though, we are going to step in the name of our Black Sea client state. Unfortunately though, Hayastan basically destroys their army in the field immediately and takes their capital in the first turn of the war. So Trapezoros, they do have some forces on the other side of the Black Sea, but basically they are wiped out immediately. So there wasn't much point us really stepping in to protect them. And now we're going to have the consequences because Hayastan is going to invade Mesopotamia, Mesopotamian territories. We saw an army there rush to start a siege at Seleucia, and now a smaller army, thankfully, comes down to attack from the north. And this time, things aren't particularly bad because our garrison army is actually of similar size. The enemy have better quality, so they have the advantage on the balance bar, but I thought we could actually pull something off here if we just fight it cleverly here on the battlefield. So we're setting up to defend the choke points in the town, of course, basically straight avenues into our hoplite phalanx, so they'll have to fight us frontally, the best situation for us. So the enemy is going to set up and start coming in down the various causeways. They're going to have 3 avenues of attack. Here's their first one. They're leading with the unit I'm most scared of, these heavy swordsmen who have Greek-style shields in some cases, rushing up to fight with my phalanx. Now they're significantly better in melee than my men, so if they want, they can just fight all the way through this phalanx and then continue on. So what I'm going to do is have my archers focus on this unit. They're heavily armoured, so archers won't do much damage to them, but I think it's worth using up all the ammunition to just gradually kill that unit, because nothing else on the battlefield is going to be able to kill them, so this is my only chance. So the phalanx are basically just acting as a distraction. On this road, things are better. The enemy are attacking with their pretty rubbishy looking medium spears, no armour, wooden shields. I'm expecting a victory there, although they are supported by Javcav, who could potentially pose a threat. On another entrance, they're attacking with cataphracts, super heavy shock cavalry. My phalanx here manages to repel a cataphract charge, although it breaks up the formation a little bit. They then come in to finish the job with more of those heavy swordsmen who I'm going to struggle against. So again, this phalanx is going to have to just somehow hold. They don't have enough archers to fight into this blob as well. The cataphracts attempting a second charge through their own men doesn't do very much. So yes, this front will lose eventually, so we need to win somewhere else to free up troops. Hopefully fighting those medium spears will be okay. And I've even kept a few reserves to start doing rear attacks. I've got hoplites and mob heading one way, and another squad of mob heading another way to come around to hit the enemy's rear. They've still got reserves they haven't deployed, so it's going to be dangerous to rear attack, but we have to try. I also get some archers to take out the enemy's Javcav, which makes this road even more likely to go our way, because that'll leave just the enemy's medium spears, who will lose to my hoplites in a straight fight, and the archers of course can support them as well. What? Who authorized that? By the gods! A declaration of war on Hayastan will be out of the remit for the whole council, let alone Artemios! His men probably convinced him to do it because they want to fight. Or maybe this is the ghost of Eusebius still haunting us. To go to war over a single city because they claim to be Greek, ignoring that they are nothing compared to the Armenians. If there is to be a single source of my undoing, this will be it, mark my words. Write to Epaphroditos and get him back to Mesopotamia. Mascat will not be required anymore. We'll march north to Seleucia. I'm sure the enemy will strike there. Wait, that messenger approaching. You there? Is it Seleucia? Artemios, I will not forgive you for this. Break camp now. My hoplites, flanking round to the north part of the town, encounter the enemy's cataphracts who come out to charge them. Their charge manages to get all the way through the hoplite unit. Not very often you see that actually happen. My mob were also bunched in there as well. They won't do very well. So now you might think this is okay because the cataphracts are now fighting with my spear unit, theoretically effective against them, but the enemy stats are so high that we basically just didn't kill any of them. We found it impossible to break through their armor, I guess. So the cataphracts are fine to do this, and they can just cycle charge me without losing any men. You can see I'm getting the mob out of there to try and find a different route towards the enemy's rear. On the other side of town, the other unit of mob that I sent in to attack encounters some of the enemy's lighter cavalry. Not an enormous problem, because these cavalry have stats that are so low that even my mob can fight against them, so totally the opposite situation to the hoplites, so I can just let that happen. Some good news is that those scary swords that led the enemy's attack have now been repulsed thanks to the constant rain of arrows we've been putting upon them. The other spear units coming in are less effective, so that's more okay for them to just fight against the phalanx. The problem is those swords are replaced by a superior unit. They come in with their general spear unit. Very heavy spear unit with massive shields, loads of armour. The unit our archers will struggle to do damage, so I'm going to switch fire with the archers onto the lesser units just to thin out their numbers. Here you can see those cataphracts doing their cycle charges. Every time they go away to cycle, I can move my hoplites up a little bit, getting closer and closer to a potential rear attack on the enemy, but the cataphracts are slowly grinding me down. My men starting to lose health against all these shock charges. Hoplites probably are one of the best units for resisting such heavy charges, so that's good at least. Now over here with those other mob, the cavalry who were fighting them decided to quit that engagement and go and fight in this main melee, trying to break through the phalanx, which is fine by me because they're going to be weak against the units they're fighting there, and my mob can now rear attack. So I was hoping this rear attack might shock some of the enemy units to rout. You can see I got one to wavering. Didn't quite spread the panic that I really wanted there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cycle the mob in and out. They're not going to do anything actually in melee, so I might as well just have them charge over and over again to have those tiny morale shocks, and eventually it might do something. The cataphracts came back to attack their original target, these guys defending one of the roads. We're starting to actually kill a couple of them now. I think they must gradually be having their health ground down, and by fighting in straight melee, stuck there so they can't charge, they're going to slowly be killed by my hoplites. The hoplites they were targeting have come to rear attack that area as well, so we've got the enemy surrounded there, that's something. Now on the fight where it was medium spears, we're able to win thanks to the rear attacks by my mob, so we now slaughter those medium spear squads, which is useful, but the more important part is that we freed up these extra hoplite units to go and do what we want. I decided I don't need to shore up my defences, so I'm going to send them all into a rear attack. On the main street where the enemy is still fighting, my archers have done good damage to the enemy. You can see lots of the enemy's troops dead there, even their heavier ones. My first phalanx here that's fighting with the enemy's best units is about to break, but I put my general with this garrison hoplites right behind. Some of my men looking strangely tired despite this unit having not actually fought yet. I guess this is happening very early in the morning or something. But anyway, because I had those hoplites from the other street who could make a rear attack, we now have a definitive advantage. I rear attack some of the lesser units, and because they have low morale, they simply break, and that denies the enemy a lot of their numbers. Suddenly we have a big advantage, as you can see on the balance bar. The rear attack on the heavier troops doesn't really do anything. Their morale's high enough that they're not shocked, and their stats are high enough that they're not going to die by these attacks, so we're just going to grind them down now. We're going to get their unit down to a low number of troops before they'll have low enough morale to break. But basically we have all of the enemy's remaining troops surrounded. They're going to be killing us faster than we're killing them, but we have a big numerical advantage because of the enemy's routes. So eventually those men are ground down, they rout. It's a heroic victory for our defending garrison. A perfect start to our war with Hayastan. We've denied them the chance to take this town, even though it wasn't of particular strategic importance. The enemy's army, as you can see, very heavily damaged, pretty much wiped out. They're not going to be doing anything for a long time. Our garrison even in pretty good shape. It wouldn't have been a huge problem if we'd had a Pyrrhic victory there, because of course the garrison would just come back. But that went absolutely fine. So a nice start. We see a few more Hayastan troop movements around the place, but no other attacks. So here's the news that Seleucia is under siege. We're also reminded we have a high civil war chance, just to make things even more challenging for us. And we also learned that the council are trying to adopt Eutychus, basically pull him onto the council and away from the Timu Khoi. We're going to spend an absolutely enormous sum of money to stop doing that, to maintain the Timu Khoi's influence, because Eutychus is now a relatively famous commander. So there's that dead army. It's actually expanded out a little bit. Nothing to worry about. Here's Trapezoros. You can see it's now occupied by Hayastan. I was sure there was another Trapezoros army somewhere, so you can see me looking for it. And as I scroll up into these frozen northern wastes, we eventually find it. That was the army I was thinking of. There's nothing left. I think they were at war with the hordes of the steppe and have obviously been defeated recently, and now they're taking attrition. They're out at winter. Basically, the reason for me joining this war is about to be wiped off the table because Trapezoros are about to go. We may be able to liberate them and bring them back later on, though. The Daemons of Polymus are going to step onto this war because Hayastan's empire extends all the way up just to the east of where Artemios is positioned. So he has an opportunity to now do some fighting on the northern ends of Hayastan's empire, but the main part of the fighting will be done here by Cretheus and his supporters around Mesopotamia. First, he'll move to relieve the siege at Seleucia, which should be relatively easy because it has a 20-unit garrison in that city, and we're going to get Epaphroditos to come up to support the war as well. At first I wanted to sail up, but it's actually faster to just walk all the way, so he'll be focusing on the southern part of Hayastan's territory. So, with all these armies, hopefully we can make a blow against our new enemy. We'll find out next time. Hayastan's gambit that the Massalians would care little for their bonds to the troubled state of Trapezoros failed. They won the access to the Black Sea trading networks that they sorely needed, but they had not properly prepared to wage war closer to their core, where suddenly their borders were subject to change. Opportunistic attacks on the territory of Cretheus yielded little but a rallying call for supporters of the Republic to prepare for a push into the mountains and plateaus to the east. But for Massalia, things weren't exactly going to be easy. The Armenians were as powerful as the Republic militarily, and they could be reinforced much more easily due to having a more coherent collection of territory. For Cretheus, the pressure was great.